Joining me today from Big Bay Tax Advisory and Big Bay Business Advisory is Krigan Naicker. Welcome, Krigan. Thank you for joining us and making the time to be able to help us with this tax literacy webinar. I will give you a bit of a background about both of us in the short while. But what I'd like to just state from the very start is that in coming up with this webinar, Krigan and I have tried very hard to make one that is about tax literacy, about helping South African expats abroad in understanding their reporting obligations when it comes to SARS, but in a friendly, easy to understand manner. There are many people out there who are scared by the idea of taxes and completing returns and are petrified of SARS and what's going to happen. And in my own personal experiences with them and many clients that I have, it's usually not like that. SARS is very willing to help in many and in most cases. It just depends on what sort of foot you're coming from. If you're upfront and you look for help, they're always way too eager and willing to be of help. It doesn't have to be a scary topic. It doesn't have to be a complicated or difficult topic. And this is what Krigan and I are going to try and do with today's webinar. Hoping and going from that outset that if we make it easy to understand and friendly, then the more one becomes tax literate, the less one is scared of it, and the easier it comes to then understanding such matters. Let me then do a quick intro to Holborn.
At Holborn Assets, we know that trust is the foundation of any financial partnership. For over 25 years, we have been more than a financial services company. We have been a trusted partner to over 20,000 clients with 26 offices across 18 countries. Our dedication to our clients has earned us a 5-star rating on Trustpilot with over 2,000 glowing reviews. As a fully regulated, multi-award winning company, we are trusted with managing over $2 billion in assets. Our team of fully qualified advisors is committed to providing you with personalized, market-leading financial solutions. Choose Holborn Assets, your trusted partner in wealth management and financial advice. Visit our website or call us today to start your journey towards financial success.
So again, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you may be joining in the world. Again, welcome to Krigan, who is with us from Big Bay Tax Advisory. A little information about myself first and the company that I work for, Holborn. A nice sort of video, a little outdated, but it gives you a background in terms of who we are and where we are. We are the second largest independently owned independent financial advisory globally. We have several $1 billion in terms of assets under advisement, licensed in many jurisdictions across the globe with offices in over 18 different countries, managing the wealth of around 20 to 30,000 clients in over 30 different countries. Myself in particular, Matthew Theron, I am a senior associate with Holborn, and I specialize in your high net wealth individuals within the South African tax borders, as well as then expats, South African expats and other American and British, Australian expats abroad. In terms of qualifications, I'm internationally qualified through the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investments in the UK, which is the industry leader when it comes to financial education, having passed both my level 3 and level 4 chartered exams. I have 2 tertiary qualifications, specifically in tax and tax law. I have a national diploma in financial management. I also have advanced level qualifications in financial planning, estate planning, as well as South African investments. I've also passed my regulatory exams required to be able to give advice in South Africa. I'm licensed and listed on the FSCA website, and I am also a member of the South African Institute for Taxation. Joining me today is Krigan from Big Bay Business Advisory and Taxation. Krigan and his team deal very regularly with expats, and in my search, dealing with so many expats, finding an accountant or a tax advisor or a tax practitioner who has the experience when it comes to dealing with expats has not been a particularly easy thing to do. You'll get many out there who advertise they have looking for doing business with expats, but don't have the actual experience or the knowledge behind them. Krigan is one of the very few that I found when I speak to him and we come to speaking about international clients. He understands exactly what I need. He understands the world that I operate in. He has experience. He often visits abroad, and he has on the ground experience. So he's not going to make some of the mistakes that I've seen many other tax advisors or accountants making back home. And I'll get into those sort of things a bit later. In terms of Krigan, he is a chartered business accountant, chartered accountant in South Africa. He is a registered and licensed tax practitioner, meaning that Krigan is legally allowed to give advice when it comes to taxes. So when we get to the end and we have the questions and answers, you're more than welcome to ask your questions and know that at least the answers come from someone who is extremely highly qualified, experienced, has the knowledge and the expertise to be able to answer it with authority. He's made a name for himself in the subject of taxation. And Krigan, if I can ask you to just give a bit of a background or introduction about yourself, please.
Hey, Matthew. Pleasure to be here today. My career spanned a decade and a half, specifically in the world of taxation. Got a lot of experience and exposure in taxation, and love what I do. Love playing in the world of tax, both domestically and internationally, and love to solve problems.
And that's what a lot of tax is, being able to solve problems. Well, welcome, Krigan, and thank you for joining us today. So, as set out in the very beginning, the aim that Krigan and I would like to achieve with this webinar is to make tax friendly. To try and go through what are the reporting requirements, what are the things that one needs to know when you are an expat living abroad, earning an income, but you're a South African tax resident, and we'll go into what that means as well. But from an easy to understand nature, so that way you don't feel you need to be frightened of SARS or frightened or scared of taxes. It's something, in our last webinar, Krigan put it very much, it's an administrative thing. It's not something that's going to come up to bite you. So let us get started. What we will discuss today is we will talk about tax residency and what that actually means, because many people are confused between tax residency, domicile, and nationality, and that's something that in its own are three completely separate things, and one can understand then why some find it confusing. We'll also talk briefly about the Section 10 exemption when it comes to foreign income that you earn whilst you're earning abroad. And by foreign income, very simply, it means if you're earning money outside of South Africa. It's not in rands and it's not earned inside South Africa. And then also we will talk about SARS auto assessments. We'll go into that a bit, as well as then e-filing, and then what is the so-called, not quite grace period, but what is this period that ends now at the end of December when it comes to coming forward with SARS? And then we will have a Q&A at the end. So let's then get started. And that is then with the question of tax residency. Now, there are three things that you can be. There's tax residency, there is nationality, and there is domicile. And those three things are very different. And your domicile is simply where you live, your proof of residence. So if you're living in South Africa, your domicile is South Africa. If you're living in China, your domicile is China. If you're living in the Caribbean, then the Caribbean is your domicile. So that's where you are living, where you are actually based. It's not where you're going on holiday or where do you spend time every now and then. It's not where you, that one of the terms used in taxes, habitually return to. So where do you go back to after your wanderings? No, this is where are you living right now? That is your domicile. Your nationality is, well, what passport you have. If you've got a South African passport, or the green mamba as they call it, then that's your nationality. Some people may even have more than one. You may have a dual national, someone who has both a South African passport and a European passport. passport, or a South African passport and a UK passport, in which case they may have two nationalities. Your tax residency, though, is a very different thing. So if we ask Krigan, in an easy, simple sort of manner, how would you describe tax residency?
So, Matthew, most of our guests today are South Africans, spending their time in Asia, making money, and they would likely return back to South Africa, which they consider home. So, tax residency is which country has the taxing rights on that taxpayer. And for us South Africans who go abroad and earn that foreign income, they would come back home to South Africa. And South Africa is the correct jurisdiction to tax those South African taxpayers.
Thank you. So if you are then living and working abroad, you can still be, just to make that very clear for everyone, you can still be tax resident in South Africa. Is that correct?
100%.
Brilliant. And does it matter then if you've been abroad for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, or even the last 15 years? Can you still be tax resident in South Africa, even if you've been living and working, teaching in Asia for 20 years?
Well, until such time that you have fulfilled the administrative requirements to leave South Africa, until that paperwork is done, you are still a South African tax resident. So most of today, the tips and tricks is more administrative. If you're able to sort out your tax admin, life becomes super easy. So you can live overseas for a number of years and still be a tax resident in South Africa.
Brilliant. And I think this is where many people go wrong and they get confused. They assume they've left South Africa. They didn't do anything to financially or emigrate from a tax perspective. They didn't deregister with SARS. They haven't done anything. They've left and they've been working abroad for the last 5, 10, 15 years. And they assume then that they're not tax residents in South Africa, where one can very much still be. And what we will do is later on in the webinar, I will launch a poll. And in that poll, you can then say, have you deregistered or have you formally ceased tax residence in South Africa? Because if you haven't, then the chances are very likely that you are still South African tax resident and you do need to be filling in tax returns back home. So I do encourage all of you to take part in that poll. It helps us to understand the clients and the people that are on the webinar, and also it gives you the opportunity that if you do want information or you want help, it allows us to then be able to reach out to you and be able to do that. It is entirely confidential and the information is not shared with anyone. So we've already established that it doesn't matter if you've been living abroad for many years, you can still be tax resident in South Africa. It doesn't matter that if you you're earning an income and you don't plan on coming back to South Africa. That has got nothing to do with whether you are tax resident or not. And this is something where, Krigan, if I may ask you in terms of that, what if you've left South Africa, you've not stopped your tax residency formally with South Africa, but you're of the opinion, I'm going to spend the rest of my life living abroad, I'm never going to go back to South Africa. Is that a valid argument? Does that mean you're automatically not tax resident?
No, I mean, to have the intent that you're never coming back to South Africa, well then, where is your tax jurisdiction? Where is your primary residence? Where are you going to say, this territory is now my home? And what are the legal requirements for you to now be in that territory? Do
Exactly.
they allow you a lifelong entry point? I mean, most countries allow either 30, 60, 90 days for you to be present in that jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Then you have to leave. So
There are
unless you've
some
got a golden visa,
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. There are some that will even allow you up to 10 years. But the bigger thing is then it comes back to nationality. And this is something that often SARS will look at. Very simply, You say, I'm never going back to South Africa. It's the worst thing since sliced bread. I'm going to spend the rest of my life living abroad. Well, very simply, if all you've got is a South African passport, you don't have a European passport or a UK passport or American passport or something else, well, then very simply, you have no choice but to return to South Africa, because more likely your visa that you are on at the moment is employment based. At some point, you're going to reach that point where you can't work anymore and you're not then able to renew your visa. And then ultimately, if you don't have a different passport, you're going to have to return to South Africa. So tax residency is one of those things. It doesn't matter if you've been abroad 10, 15, 20, 30, even 40 years. At some point, unless you have a different passport, you may very well end up having to come back to South Africa. On that note, very quickly, Krigan, I don't know if it's the same with you, but a lot of the people that I speak to, and I've met so many people, so many expats living abroad in my times living in Asia, as well as with the clients that I do. And I found there are two types of people generally. It's, one, they say one should never generalize. But I find you get those who leave South Africa. Generally, they want to go and explore. They want to go and travel, and they want to, see what's out there. And they only plan to be there for a year or two, maybe 3. And oddly enough, those are the people you speak to 10, 15, 20 years down the line, and they're still there. And then I find you get those who've left, they're never, ever coming back. And somehow 2, 3 years later, they are back. Right, so let's move on then to the next thing. So if you are living and working abroad, you've got a South African passport, you don't have any other passports, so you haven't formally ceased tax residency in South Africa. Is the money that you earn abroad automatically taxed inside South Africa, or is there an exemption?
First and foremost, as a South African tax resident, you are taxed on your worldwide income. Okay. Section 1010 is for taxpayers who work abroad, and an exemption applies to the value of 1.25 million rand on income. However, you need to actually do the admin paperwork and fulfill the obligations that Section 1010 allows for. So until you have fulfilled those obligations and submit that paperwork, you would be taxed on your foreign earnings abroad.
Thank you. And this is very important because some may, if you follow me online, about 2-3 months ago, I did quite a series online when it comes to tax and tax literacy, purely because I found myself being approached by a number of people where they were suddenly being faced with penalties from SARS, some with ridiculous amounts. One client in particular had 150,000 rands worth of bills and fees, legal fees. And the one thing that I found was you will get accountants and you'll get even some tax practitioners out there who, what do they do day to day? They deal with South Africans living in South Africa, earning an income in South Africa. It's that you do that everyday regular routine. They very rarely get to deal with expats such as the people that we have on the call today. And this is where Keegan at least has those expertise, because with those clients, where I found the issue is that in one particular instance, it was an expat living and working in the US and then moved across to Asia. And their accountant for the last few years had just simply on their tax returns been saying that they were unemployed because they weren't working inside South Africa. And as Krigan very rightly said, as a South African tax resident, you are taxed on your worldwide income. It doesn't matter where you are or where you're earning that money. It is still taxable inside South Africa. So you cannot say that someone is unemployed and not working inside South Africa because, well, are you working? Yes, you're working abroad. And where this issue came to light was this particular client who had a tax-free savings account back home. SARS picked up from their tax-free savings account, and we can ask Krigan about that later, this newest revelation. Does SARS monitor your bank account? It's one of those things that's not entirely new. It's just that they've gotten better at being able to do it. Now, this is where your banks and your financial institutions are required by law, if you have a tax-free savings account, to report that information to SARS on every 6 months, on a half-yearly basis. And this is where the SARS then picked up the fact that, well, if you're unemployed, but you're putting 36,000 a year or 3,000 a month into a tax-free savings account. Where is this money coming from? Obviously, something doesn't add up. And that's when it then led down further into the investigation that, well, she was employed and she was, even though her accountant was doing it, lying on her tax returns. Very quickly in terms of that, so to bring it back to that exemption then, if you're living abroad, earning an income abroad, you do have to, and we've established that within the first part of this webinar, the fact that you are still tax resident, you do have to declare your income inside South Africa. And then, as Krigan said, there is an exemption that you can claim that if you're earning below that 1.25 million. Are there any requirements to be able to qualify for that exemption, Krigan? Do you need to be out of the country for a certain amount of time, or is it automatic? And do you physically, as you said, you have to apply for it? But what are the qualifications? What are the criteria for that exemption?
So Matthew, the criteria for you to qualify for this exemption, you need to be outside the country for a continuous period of 60 days and more than 183 days in a 12-month period.
Okay, brilliant. So as long as you've been out of the country, essentially, I say rule of thumb for more than 6 months, you'll be able to qualify for that exemption. Is there a specific time period? Like, does it run from January to December, the regular calendar year, or does it run according to the tax year from March to February? What is the time period?
The time period is a rolling 12-month period. So we can play with the calendar year, we can play with the tax year to best suit the exemption allowed. So as long as we're making a 12-month period and the 60 continuous days in it and the 183 days, we're good with the exemption. So for example, if you earn R1 million and you meet those requirements, the entire R1 million is exempt from taxation.
Brilliant. And is it something that you need to apply for every year, or once you've done it the first year, is it just automatic every year?
Nothing is automatic fully. So for you to claim the exemption, you need to be putting through all your admin documents to get that benefit. So every single year, admin.
Yeah, and I think that's what you said in the previous webinar. It is an administrative exercise. What about clients then who have not been doing it and now need to start doing it? In terms of guidance for that admin, what sort of documentation would you say should they safely keep? What is a good idea? What kind of things should one keep to be able to apply for that exemption every year?
Okay, as an accountant, I say always keep everything.
Yeah.
As a tax guy, I will say keep everything. But when we come to what is statutory, what is primary evidence, what is secondary?
Yeah.
Statutory documents, always keep your contracts. That's first and foremost. You're working in a foreign country, you're definitely going to get an employment letter or a contractual agreement of some kind. That is a source document. Please keep that. Passports. You are leaving the country. Your passport is going to be stamped on your exit and on your return. Please keep that. Pay slips, I know, very topical. Some countries give it, other countries not. South Africa is statutory. South Korea, not so much. So at best, we'll come up with something to verify. Yes, you did work at that school for a period, be it January to December, and you did get paid X. So certain things you're going to have as default statutory items. Other things we can work with. But for the most part, passports, contracts, mostly payslip. If not, we'll see what we can do.
Okay, brilliant. So if we sort of summarize at this particular point, essentially what we're saying is that if you're living and working abroad, you are more likely than not a South African tax resident, and you do need to submit a tax return in South Africa. And you do not have to be scared of doing so, because if you've been abroad for 6 months or more, then you are very likely able to claim an exemption, meaning you're not going to pay tax on that money again because you can claim that exemption. But you do need to apply for that exemption. What happens if someone doesn't apply for that exemption and comes back after 10 years with a whole lot of money, and SARS then says, well, where did all of this come from? You've been earning nothing for the last 10 years. What could happen in that sort of scenario?
In
Do
all
they
likelihood,
automatically, sorry, do they automatically then get that exemption when they come back, or what happens?
what you don't apply for, you will not receive. And in all likelihood, when you bring money back into the country, you would have to declare a classification. And if you're going to say it is earned income, savings, etc., you need to prove that source. And there's no such thing as zero taxation. You will be taxed
Yeah.
somewhere in some jurisdiction. And if you have escaped being taxed, then it is likely that you would be taxed back home on that. And you would forfeit that exemption because you did not apply for it in the first place.
And this is the thing, if we can reiterate anything, it's you do need to apply for that exemption every year. And this then brings us on to our next question and the next side of this, and that's the auto assessments. Because as Krigan says, you do need to apply for them every year. And when it comes to auto assessments, something that I've also had many clients ask about, well, I got an SMS from SARS that said I earned nothing last year, or that I don't have to pay any tax, so I just that was fine. And this is one of those things where, as Krigan was saying within the previous question, if you've not been declaring everything in every year, or you've been just automatically assuming and accepting what SARS is saying, that you don't have to pay tax and that you've not been earning any money, you could end up in a much bigger problem later on. So let's start off with, what is an auto assessment, Krigan?
An auto assessment is SARS best fit scenario from all the data that they've got access to. So third-party data is the financial institutions, for example, like the banks. They would have your interest income that you've been earning because you've got money tucked away in a money market account, and that interest may be taxable. So they will pull that. If you are in South Africa and you work for an employer and you get a salary, then SARS would have access to that salary income. And they would know that you are an employee in South Africa, and that will be pre-populated in your tax return through an RP5. So wherever SARS has got access to third-party data in financial institutions or your employers or globally, that would be pre-populated into your income tax return.
Okay, and what's important to point out here, as Krigan says, is that SARS gets this information for those auto assessments from different financial institutions and company information back home. And if you are, and this is very important then, because if you are working abroad, the company that you are working for and the bank that you are with may not necessarily report that information to SARS. So SARS could very well say, according to our records, you've not earned a salary and you therefore don't have to pay any taxes. So here is your assessment. You're all good and clear. But they do not know that you have earned an income abroad because it hasn't been reported to them. What happens in that case where you accept that assessment, where you don't go and query it or decline it or query it or sort of dispute it? What happens in that sort of case, Krigan, if you just accept it?
So those auto assessments come with a proviso stating that should you, the taxpayer, see anything that is inaccurate, for you to go and edit that tax return and put through an accurate reflection of your income affairs. Should you not do it, then that is a criminal act and you will be prosecuted, other than being financially penalized. But yeah, criminal act, prosecution.
And this there is the thing that many people don't realize, that lying on a tax return and an auto assessment is a form of a tax return. If it's saying that you're not earning any income or you haven't earned any income and you agree with that, then that is lying on a tax return, which is a criminal offence. And also one of the reasons why, when this previous client of mine ended up in issues with huge fines and legal fees, it was because on her tax return, her accountant said that she was unemployed, which obviously turned out she's not. She was working, just not working inside South Africa. So it is very important that you do disclose your information to SARS, and then claim that. This is the bigger thing: claim the exemption, apply for that exemption. If someone's giving you something, rather do the right thing. It's an administrative post. You get used to it. Every year it happens. It's not the most complicated of things. SARS is more than eager to help. People like Krigan, with the expertise, the qualifications, the knowledge and experience, are more than willing to be able to look into the affairs for you, see what can be done. But as with everything, it's always that case of when it comes to SARS, rather, and this is what I tell some of my bigger clients back home, it's easier to have that conversation where you're the one asking, rather than having four men from SARS sit across the table from you and they're doing the questioning. So rather be forward-coming or forward-facing than afterwards. Something that I found in terms of assessments in SARS that is an issue for many expats living abroad is the whole question then of e-filing and being able to do their returns. So very briefly, Krigan, what is e-filing?
E-filing is your online platform that SARS has, where you can have a complete profile of your tax affairs and do your submissions.
So if you've never paid tax before and you don't have a tax number, but you're earning and living an income abroad, are you required to then apply to SARS or do e-filing with SARS and apply for a tax number and submit your returns, inform SARS about your income abroad? Or can you just pretend like you know nothing?
Unfortunately, we cannot pretend. We do live in the real world where we have to all be obligated for taxes somewhere. So we have to apply for the tax number. We have to get that SARS e-filing profile activated and put through the necessary requirements of those returns.
Yeah. And unfortunately, this is also one of those things that I have had many people reach out and ask. When it comes to e-filing, it's not the most friendly or user-friendly system. It's also not the easiest of systems to actually sign up for if you're not living inside South Africa and you don't have a South African telephone number. So what can people who are living abroad, living in China, for example, or in other parts of Asia, what can they do to be able to get an e-filing profile?
So
Are
for the
you
most
able to
part,
help?
yeah, for the most part, the one constraint is you are required to have a South African cell phone number when you first register. Obviously, we don't get to keep our cell phone numbers. It's on loan to us as South Africans from the various service providers. So what you can do is ask someone in the interim to use their local number, or we can use our own number at the practice as the primary number, just so that we can do the registration and then switch over to your own number afterwards and set your email address as the primary contact.
Okay, brilliant. And then once they've got that e-filing, how easy is it for someone to declare their foreign income and to claim that Section 10 exemption on e-filing? Is it very easy, or would you recommend that they reach out to someone like yourself to help with that particular process?
Okay, so navigating e-filing is fairly easy. Going through the tax returns and putting through that foreign income, getting those exemptions, relatively, let's say, moderate. So the issue comes with, should you submit that return and you mess it up? Every time you mess up a return, the red flag kicks out at SARS and your risk profile increases. So instead of you submitting and just getting a verification, it then goes to audit and there's more scrutiny. So if you're going to do it, make sure you do it right first time. That is your key to success here. If not, then you're going to get 1,000 questions thereafter, because every time you correct that return, then there's more scrutiny, more questions, and more documents that SARS is going to require.
Absolutely. Look, personally, in my own capacity, despite my education, knowledge, and experience, I don't even do my own tax returns. I let someone else, a qualified tax practitioner, do that. It's not something I deal with on a regular basis and in large numbers. My field of expertise lies somewhere else. But even for me, with my qualifications and background, it can be quite a challenging process. So, and I would much rather pay someone else and make sure it's done correctly and done properly the first time round than bugger or mess something up. So it is something that Krigan and his team can help with, and you're more than welcome to reach out and have them help you every year. We will share Krigan's details afterwards. I will also launch a poll very soon, in which case you can, within that poll, answer those questions, and we'll be able to determine if you would like to have some help or advice or not when it comes to doing so. But yeah, SARS e-filing, Krigan's been quite polite when he says it's relatively easy and then the exemptions part is moderate. I think for the average person out there who is not an accountant or doesn't have any qualifications in tax, it can be quite a daunting sort of website. Right, so for those of us then, and for people out there who have not been submitting their tax returns, or may have an accountant who's been saying that they have been unemployed all this time and earned nothing, or for those who have been accepting their auto returns or auto assessments as zero because, well, SARS says they don't need to pay tax because they've not earned anything and they agree. What is this so-called grace type period that is available until the end of December? And can you give us just a little information about that?
Okay, so the current grace period that is available at the moment is on tax liability, debt owed to SARS. SARS is saying, okay, fine, we know that you owe money that is more than a year old. Please come to us. We can work out a plan. However, that's on debt. That is not on you having to be compliant with actually submitting past returns. If that's due, then the best time to do it is now, before SARS notifies you that it's outstanding and that they are coming for you.
And this speaks to the whole, as I said from the very beginning, when it comes to SARS, you coming forward is always better than SARS coming to look for you. They often have this sort of thing, and SARS is more than willing to help look at this particular type of grace period. Even if you owe them money, they will give you some time to come forward. So if you do want to check on your compliance and check if you have any outstanding returns or any outstanding penalties or taxes, I'm certain that Krigan will be able to help you do that. Obviously, he doesn't work for free. He does work for a fee. But from what I found, is extremely practical in terms of his fees. Now, what happens if you do have, you have people out there that do have outstanding returns or penalties? Would you be able to help them? And what happens if they do nothing about it?
So yes, we can definitely help to remedy the non-compliance issues, which is outstanding returns or outstanding debt. With regards to what happens should you not file. In the background, you've got a tax admin arena where you get penalties on non-compliance. So every month there'll be, at the low end, 250 Rand accruing every month for 35 months, until such time you submit that specific tax year return. So if you got 5 years, you're going to have 5 knocks of 250 Rand a month happening. That's the minimum. Goes up to, I think, 16,000 Rand a month, depending on the income that you're earning. So it's step up against income from 250 to 16,000 Rand a month.
Okay. All right. Then if we carry on then, so from there I've just launched or we will launch the poll in just a moment. Please, I do encourage you all to take part in that poll. The first two questions aren't compulsory, so you do not feel that, answer them if you'd like to. It helps us to understand the demographic of the people. It is entirely confidential. Nothing gets passed on to anyone else, but it has helped understand the sort of people and the people, the members who are watching the webinar and next previous webinars and future ones. What I was able to determine from the previous one that we did last week was that 67% of the attendees that attended last week's webinar did, what did I say it was? 100% did not know that they needed to file tax returns back home, which is staggering. That means everyone did not know that they had to do that, which is I suppose why we're doing this sort of webinar. Now, online at the screen at the moment, you'll be able to see my information. If you want help, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. My expertise are on the investment side and ensuring that your savings, your investments are set up correctly from a tax perspective. I'm available on WeChat as well as Kakao Talk, or you can email me or reach out to me on Messenger. More importantly, here is Krigan's contact information. You can scan the QR codes if you'd like to reach out to him. His telephone number is there, or you can email him, krigan@bigbaytax.co.za. He is also on LinkedIn and Facebook, so please do reach out. He's more than willing and more than eager to help. I can't see, for some of the reason, I've been having internet issues on my side, so I can't see if the poll has started, but it should start very soon. We will then open up to any questions that any of you may have. Now, one of the questions that was asked in the previous webinar, which I found was a very important one, was that when it comes to having to submit those sort of tax returns, they wanted to know, and we've gone through this already in the webinar, just but for those who've missed it, what documents should you keep to be able to claim that exemption, that Section 10 exemption? Krigan, if you can just summarize for us again very quickly, what are the sort of documents you need to keep for that Section 10 exemption, just to prove that you were out of the country?
So minimum requirements would be, well, what did you earn? So that's contractual, have a contract, have some pay slips, have a letter of confirmation from the school. For you to be outside the country, you would have needed to exit the country, and that is a passport, and those passport stamps are vital. You're going to need to definitely scan those and have that ready and available. So those would be the minimum requirements.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not able to see the questions on my side for some other reason. I am no longer a host. I'm just busy fixing that very quickly. Some of the other questions that we've also had was how do you know if you have ceased tax residency?
You would know if you have ceased when you have completed all that paperwork, and there's a lot of paperwork to get done to prove that you are no longer a tax resident of South Africa and you are a tax resident of a foreign jurisdiction. Until such time SARS comes back to you and says, yes, we agree and we approve that you are no longer a tax resident of South Africa. Your tax obligation is with South Africa.
Okay, yeah, and that's the bigger thing. You can't just assume that because you've left, you've stopped being a tax resident. There would need to have been some form of documentary process. It would have involved paperwork. It won't just have been, I was working for company X and then I stopped working for them, I resigned, and I went to go and live and work abroad. It's not that simple. What are the requirements for ceasing tax residency? How complicated a process is it, Krigan? And would you be able to help with that?
Definitely be able to help with that. So there's no such thing as ghosting South Africa, the South African Tax Revenue Service. Yeah, they will come find you because they've got access to information from around the world. So what happens is tax authorities share information, and it would be picked up. You are in a foreign jurisdiction, and yes, they would have access to you there. For you to cease your tax residency in South Africa, you would have to pick up tax residency in that foreign country. So do you meet those requirements to be in that country, to be a tax resident in that country? Until such time that happens, you would be a tax resident of South Africa. So it's not automatic. It is still an administrative process, and it does take time. You need to prove that you are no longer coming back home to South Africa and you consider South Africa to be your home, that you consider that foreign jurisdiction now to be your home.
Brilliant. Okay. Very quick reminder, please do take part in that poll. It does help us to understand what we can focus on going forward. And if you do need help, it allows us to be able to reach out if you do want help. Again, it is entirely confidential. We're not going to report any of this to anybody. Another question, Krigan, is, and I did say earlier, sorry, that I would speak briefly to this during the webinar. The whole thing that's going around on social media and was it Jacaranda or Yacaranda radio about SARS monitoring your bank account in real time. What can you give us in terms of insight on that?
So that is definitely possible. SARS does have access to your bank account. They do know all your inflows coming through. I was actually having a meeting with another accountant over the weekend, and yeah, SARS went through his bank accounts and looked at all the inflows, even though they were transfers from one bank account into other bank accounts, and then from there transfers out into other bank accounts or savings accounts or money market accounts. And SARS basically fivefold counted the same income. So now he owes like 38 million rand of taxes, but they've just went and counted that same stream so many times.
Yeah.
So what SARS is doing is saying, well, we recognize that you've got inflows coming into your bank account, but you haven't declared either on your tax return an accurate reflection. So we're just going to look on your bank account and we're going to make up our own estimate. Now that onus shifts to you to go and disprove that you don't owe based on that estimated income. So you would have to go and now sift through your bank statements and reply to SARS that these are not income streams, these are actually transfers. This is my sole income, that's my salary, and that's where it ends. SARS has now an idea of if money is coming in, we will deem it as income until such time you tell us otherwise. So you now need to make sure in real time you know what is happening with your own income affairs and tax affairs. Otherwise, SARS will do that work for you. And you don't want that because their assumptions are not the correct assumptions.
Yeah. So, and that another question that leads to then is there a specific amount that SARS has a minimum or a maximum? You know, if you're earning, say, X amount, or if the inflows are of X amount, they'll ignore it. Or is there an amount which triggers a warning that they look at then? I know with Treasury, for example, they were wanting to change the reportable amount to, I think it's $1,000. Which it's a lot of reporting, but from SARS perspective, is there an amount that's important? You know, if you're only sending in 5,000 rand every month, SARS isn't going to pick it up, or will they pick it up?
So lately, the commissioner has been very vocal about full disclosure and transparency, and it's any amount. If you're earning income and you're not declaring it, SARS does know those inflows coming in and they deem it to be income. Now you need to go and prove otherwise. So it's any amount, and it's better that you get to tell SARS, this is my income, as opposed to SARS telling you that is your income.
So, and just to add some real life experience to that SARS monitoring your bank account. So, in my tax return for last year, when I was living abroad, one of my hobbies is photography, and I had a whole bunch of photography equipment. But after my daughter was born in 2017, so a long time ago, I haven't actually picked up my camera since then. One of those things where I'd rather be in the moment, experiencing it, than standing behind a camera, watching it. So eventually last year, since it's been 7 years, I haven't used any of my camera equipment. I thought, well, I may as well just taking up space in my wardrobe, but I'll let it go. So I then sold it. And it's not a big thing for me. I didn't even think about it. But oddly enough, with my tax return, I got asked the question, well, where did this amount come from on your bank statement? I didn't even think of that. And oh, yes, it's a camera that I sold. I didn't even sell it for a lot. I think I sold it for something like 13,000 in the end. But yes, so I got asked, what was that particular amount? There was another amount that they asked for, which was even smaller. I think I'd sold my daughter's first bicycle over Facebook. Anyhow, so yes, you do need to declare these things to SARS. Another question then that I've been asked is, when you are sending your money back to South Africa, okay, this is similar to the previous question, what amount and how will SARS see that? How does SARS know that that's income? Do you
Okay, so
answer that?
SARS doesn't know anything from when money is coming in that is income, investment, etc., or savings. If you don't tell them what it is and prove to them what it is, they will deem it as income. So you are at a very bad back foot. So it's better for you to actually get your affairs classified correctly. So when you are bringing in money into the country, you go through the Reserve Bank, and that code that you tell the Reserve Bank, this is the source of my funds, be it salary, be it savings, be it investment, be it whatever, donations, gifts. That is important. But also having the paperwork to corroborate that, the admin component that we've been speaking about, that is still critical. So when the money comes in, Reserve Bank, there's one declaration, but your admin component to back that up is critical.
And I think this is where it becomes very important, because your admin needs to be on board. You do need to, when you're sending money back to South Africa, whether it's once a year or once a quarter or whatever, you do need to be able to say within the bank what it is. And this is the other thing. Krigan will be able to explain probably more on this, but the definition for income inside South Africa, or for an annuity at least in South Africa, is that consistent, regular income. So if you're sending 5,000 Rand back, or 10,000 Rand back, or 17,000 Rand, it doesn't matter what amount you're sending back, but if you're sending that amount back every single month, then it's going to start to meet the definition of being an annuity, meaning that it has to be taxed as income. Is that correct, Krigan?
I think in this scenario where our audience today is sending money back, it's money that is being earned abroad, and it's their own earned income. And if they have already put through their tax return with the exemption and everything's above board, then that is not taxable again. But
No,
it would highlight a red flag if they didn't put through a tax
exactly.
return. Then all that money coming in would definitely now be looked at to be income and taxable now. That would be the difference.
Exactly. And this is why you do need to be reporting and doing your tax returns, because otherwise you're just leaving it up to SARS to guess and assume what all of that is. Another question that's come in then, Krigan, is what if the money is coming from a family member? So, you're living inside South Africa and someone else working in Asia is sending money to you every month.
Okay, so that's a complex question because we're looking at amounts. I mean, remember, anything more than 100,000 Rand being donated to someone is going to start incurring donations tax.
Yeah.
So for a family member to provide anything more than 100,000 Rand, a 20% donation tax would be applicable. But again, it depends what is the nature of this contribution. I mean, it could be maintenance, then that's tax exempt. It could be a list of things. But again, why? Why are you sending money, or why are you disposing of your estate to a family member? That's an important question to answer first. So you just can't freely give people money. It
No.
matters.
Okay. All right, Krigan, I think I see it's at 2 o'clock, so we've been on for an hour. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you, everyone. For those who still have questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. Reach out to either myself or reach out directly to Krigan with your questions. And I hope that we've managed to make this webinar a little easier, a little less scary in terms of when it comes to the subject of tax. Ultimately, if the takeaway from this is you do not have to be scared of SARS, they're not going to deliberately try and charge you tax on money that you've already paid income taxes on abroad, but you do still need to tell them about that, and you do need to claim the exemption. It's not automatic. And if you are being auto-assessed and the auto-assessment says that you're not earning any income, it is wrong. You do need to dispute that. And it is better to rather come forward and be upfront and ask for help than to be on the other side of the table with SARS looking at you saying, well, you know, this is what you've shown in your bank accounts and you've been doing this and you've been doing that. You've got a tax-free savings account, you've got an RA, you've got this, you've got all these things that you're funding, but you're unemployed or you're not earning any money. So where is this coming from? Then immediately you're on that back sort of foot. So rather be upfront, reach out to people like Krigan, get the help that you need. It's, as Krigan mentioned earlier, it's an administrative exercise. Once you're up and running and you're on the system, it's a lot simpler going forward. Keep your documentation so that you can prove that you are living abroad and how much time you do spend abroad. And then I hope that we will plan another one in the near future. And maybe we'll go into some of the, based on the feedback we get, we'll go into some other topics when it comes to taxes. So thank you very much for your time, Krigan. I appreciate it. I'm really happy that you were able to join us again this week, following on from last week's one, which was also very successful. All the best, Krigan, and thank you to everyone who's watched, wherever you may be. I hope you have a good evening or further morning to you. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye. Krigan, any last words?
From my side, it all comes down to admin. Please get all your paperwork together, and then we can do some compliance.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good evening or good morning, wherever you may be, and we'll see you on our next webinar. Cheers.
Ciao, guys. Bye.